Good morning or good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock in Toronto in Eastern Standard Time. Welcome to all of our Wheel and Anchor members to your pre-trip webinar for the upcoming Islands in Greece program starting in just over a month. You must be getting excited for this amazing trip around the Greek islands. So let's see, we've got a bunch of people online. So good morning, all those who said hello. Hi, Janet in Winnipeg. Hi, Linda and Randy in Severn Bridge. And I see a bunch of other names. You don't need to introduce yourself all today. You will get to know each other soon enough on the trip. And so let's see, there's not everybody's here, but we're going to get started nonetheless, because we are recording this as we do with all of our webinars. We will send you the replay and let me see, I just want to get my notes in place here. We'll send you a copy of the replay for this webinar. And we're here. Okie dokie, we are ready to go. So let's get started. And if you have questions, of course, you can type them in that chat box that you'll find at the bottom of the screen, or it might be at the top of your screen. You might have to scroll around with your mouse a little bit to find it. That's where, please, if you have any questions at all during the webinar, please type them in. I'll address them all if I can on the fly, if it's relevant to what we're talking about, but otherwise I will do it at the Q&A session at the end to make sure we get all your questions answered. So today we are going to be, first of all, talking about pre-trip information and flying to a little bit about your flight over there. That's where I'm going to spend most of the time. I'm not going to go through the itinerary in great detail because you've probably done that already. You will have gotten, I assume, a copy of our pre-trip information document, which lays out the itinerary in some detail, and we'll cover a lot of the things I'm talking about today. I'm going to mention a few other things that are not in there, so it's a good time to take notes. Yeah, the departure information, just basically what's going to happen at the end of the trip. So those are what we're going to cover today. If there's anything that I miss, again, please let me know, get your questions logged today. Of course, you can always email us afterwards, but I think it's useful on a webinar like this when we have all of our trip participants here that, to ask questions, because if you have a question, somebody else might have the same question. So let us get started. First of all, most important thing to get ready for your trip, your passport and your documents. And I always remind members, it's a good time of now, we're about a month before the trip. Make sure you know where your passport is. And if you keep it in the same safe place, don't move it. I can tell you how often it happens that people call and say a day before the trip, I can't find my passport, at which point it is difficult to do anything about it. So just make sure it's there. If you haven't double checked the expiry date, generally, we take note of that when we get your passport information, but just in case, make sure that it is valid, ideally for 6 months past the end date of the trip. It's not a requirement for the EU, but let's face it, when you get into that last year of the validity of your passport, it's a good time to start thinking about it. At these days, I think the passport office is sort of back on track, but I know that last year it was a zoo getting passports and people were waiting months in some cases. So just make sure. You don't need any special visas, of course, for Greece being part of the EU. They also they're going to be implementing a travel authorization program in the future. They've been talking about it for years. It was mentioned on our Facebook page. It's not up and running yet. Sometime next year, maybe. They've been talking about it for years. So there's nothing else you need to prepare. There's no COVID restrictions in place for Greece. So you're pretty good to go. I do recommend, if you are very comfortable with your mobile devices and so on, then you can just have your e-ticket, your copy of your plane ticket on your phone. But if you're nervous about that stuff, it's not a bad idea to print out copies just so that and I know that for a lot of our members, they're more comfortable to have a paper copy of stuff. So an e-ticket would be good. And then I always again, I have multiple copies of my passport on my phone stored in different places in different folders. And so I think it's a good idea. Even if you do it on the way to the airport, take a picture of your passport. God forbid anything should happen to it. It won't, but you never know. And so if you have a copy of it, it's also handy. And then even sometimes checking into a hotel, I just sometimes show them a picture in case my passport is tucked away in my suitcase or luggage. Just makes it a lot easier. So that's basically all that we need in terms of passport and documents. Now, of course, the next most important thing, what are you going to pack? What are you going to take on this trip? Well, September is, I think, one of the best times to visit Greece because the high season is over. So it'll still be busy. I will tell you, the crowds, the tourists are everywhere from, it seems like, all the time. So it will still be busy, particularly in places like Santorini and in Knossos and Heraklion and Crete. You'll find other visitors around. And as I say, September's a great month to travel because the weather's still warm. And when I say warm, typically in the mid to high 20s. This year, as you've read about in the news with the heat waves, I mean, I'm sure they won't, well, I shouldn't say I'm sure. I'm not sure of anything as far as weather is concerned, but be prepared for warm weather. Be prepared if the temperature goes into the 30s. It could be hot. That being said, it can also be cool, particularly in the Cyclades. They have a cool wind that shows up particularly in September called the Meltemi. And this can make the evenings quite cool. So while in the daytime, you could easily be in the mid to high 20s, in the evening, it could drop down into the high teens. And then with the cool wind coming over the sea, important to take that into consideration in terms of how you pack, what you bring to cover up for the evening. If we go out in the afternoon to a dinner, where we might leave at like 4:30 or 5 in the afternoon, then we come back in the evening. By the time we start dinner is, we try to make our dinners as early as we can. Typically in Greece, they have them a little bit later, but it may not be 9 o'clock in the evening or whatever when we come back, and then it's cool. So that's the most important thing. Obviously bring swimwear. You'll definitely want to swim in the Mediterranean, and the Mediterranean in September, because it's been heating up all summer long, is gorgeous. So I can't tell you exactly what the temperature is going to be, but I wouldn't be surprised in many of these places if it's still going to be 23, 24, 25 Celsius. It's going to be perfect, gorgeous. You're going to want to go swimming. So at least one swimsuit. And then all of the other stuff related to sunscreen, hat, a bandana or whatever to cover your head. We will be in the sun quite a bit. The Greek islands are obviously not known for a lot of trees, so you're often in exposed conditions in the sun. So whatever you do to protect yourself against the sun, sunglasses, the whole 9 yards, please be prepared. That's the most important. Talking about footwear, there's a lot of walking on this trip, as there is with all of our trips, right? Our hotels are generally within about a 10-minute walk of the town center. It's not always perfectly flat. You've seen the Greek islands, they're up and down. So there's up and down. So walking shoes, comfortable walking shoes. Apparently these cloud ones that you see around are the things to buy. But whatever, just make sure that you have comfortable shoes on. Again, if you're planning to go to the beach, a lot of the beaches in Greece are rocky. So having some sort of water shoes, beach shoes, light ones. I have a super light pair that I drag around with me, and I find, because you don't really want to buy it. You can buy anything there, of course, but particularly in places like Santorini, it's quite expensive. So honestly, you can pick stuff up here at one of these sports stores or something like that. If you're planning to go swimming, which I do recommend, beach shoes so that you can not have to go barefoot on the rock, something you can enter the water with, you'll find really handy. Similarly, again, and everybody's a little bit different in terms of what we're going to do. We have free days, as you know, throughout the trip. It's really important because a lot of the experience of Greece is wandering around towns. And so having a little beach bag or a little light backpack, like not a backpack, but like a day pack, something like that. And I'm going to try and source some for Wheel and Anchor for the future, but we've been looking for the right one for a long time. So we don't have those yet. So if you have something like that, you can throw a beach towel in, you can throw in, something to cover up in the evening. This is going to be props. The most important thing, particularly on this trip, is something to comfortably carry stuff around during the day. Flip-flops, again, as far as footwear is concerned, will be handy, although as I say, when we're out on trips and walking around, flip-flops for going out for walking around longer distances may not be super handy. But again, going to the beach, going out at night, nearby to a restaurant or something would be so. But you also don't want to overpack. I also stress, listen, we have 4 and 3 night stays at the different places, so there'll be an opportunity to go out and either do laundry in the hotel or somewhere out. So don't overpack. I've got here a water bottle. Hydration is so important, particularly here. We don't think about it. Sometimes there's a cool wind blowing with the sun shining, but you've got to stay hydrated. That being said, I've got good news. We are sending to Greece our Wheel and Anchor water bottles. So if anybody was with us in our trips in Samui and Bali last year, we gave out these water bottles. They are on their way to Greece, hopefully now. These are super handy. We'll give them to you there. They're thermal, so actually you put cold water in the morning, it's still cold in the evening, and they're relatively light and they're handy. And yeah, so we're going to give you those, so you don't need to bring a water bottle. We will supply you one when you arrive in CHANIA. Let's see what else. Otherwise, as far as packing, dressing, it's casual, of course. If you go out in Greece, Santorini is quite a hoity-toity island in some respects. If you want to go out like for a particularly nice dinner, you might want to have something that's a little bit more stylish and nice. But again, it's an informal trip, so casual, comfortable layers. Like we say for any trip, that is the order of the day. And again, I reiterate that you have something for the evenings. We're Canadians, we're used to it, but also we've just been through summer and it's been warm, so we're also not used to it. So if it drops to 15 degrees one night, if it was March, we'd say 15 degrees is balmy, but if it's in September and we just come out of 30 during the day, it'll feel chilly. So just keep that in mind. Just a couple other things to remember in terms of stuff to bring along. Obviously, a travel adapter. If you have a universal one, that's great. Of course, Europe uses the 2-prong round ones like you see here. So have one of those, or a multi-adapter. Also, your cables for your phone. Most people these days are using their phone or their iPad or whatever as both as the phone and more importantly as the camera. So you want to make sure that you're charging cables with, again, either a plug that either fits into the local plugs or this adapter plug. For the most part, you don't need converters. But apparently some electrical appliances, particularly like curling irons and stuff for women, just double check the voltage. Is most appliances will be 110 to 230. So you can just use the adapter plug. You don't need a voltage converter, but double check that in case you have anything like that. So I will mention here, mobile phone. We are strongly suggesting you bring your phones with you. We don't provide SIM cards on this trip, and I'll get into that in a few minutes when I talk about our communication app. But it is really handy to have a phone with you, even if you don't. I would not use roaming from Canada. Personally, I think it's ridiculously expensive compared to buying a SIM card locally, but you can find Wi-Fi everywhere. So even if you don't bother with the SIM card, having the phone, downloading Google Maps, it's just handy. It's just handy to have, and particularly as well for arrival, if there's a delay or something. We've had it happen. Members have not brought a phone with them, and then we have no idea where they are. Flight's delayed, and it's just, communication is so key these days. Also for packing, is if you are somebody that is susceptible to motion sickness, we are traveling by ferry between the islands. Generally in September, the water is calm. You never know. It could be, you're going to get some motion for sure. So if you are prone to motion sickness, and not to mention on some of these islands, of course, you've seen the pictures, curvy roads, windy roads, gravel, or whatever it is that your physician would advise that you take or that you're accustomed to taking, please pack that in as well. It'll be handy. Or, there's the bands and the patches, and there's all kinds of different things. Because obviously it's islands and there's boats. So that's important to remember. Do also remember to take your medications and supplements. Please put them in your hand luggage. It's also happened where people's luggage have been lost, and it's like, oh, all my essential prescription medication is in the suitcase. That obviously is problematic. Please also do take copies of your prescriptions. Again, take a picture with your phone. All this stuff that we often don't think about until we have a problem is just very useful to have. And these are from my own experiences traveling as well. It's just like, oh, I lost my prescription and I don't have a copy, and good luck getting one from your doctor in Canada on short notice when you really need it. So that's a good thing to have as well. My favorite little thing to carry along is Ziploc bags, because again, there's water involved. We're going to be at beaches and here and there. It might rain, although it probably won't rain much in September. But Ziploc bags, I use for packing. I use different sizes of bags, but also to keep your phone dry or anything else, or your wallet. I think Ziploc bags are an essential for me. So anyway, take that into consideration. Let's see what else I got on the list of things to remember. I think that's it, but anyway, I've got some other things to mention. Let's talk about money and whys, because it always comes up about what to do about money. Obviously, this is Greece, it's Europe, it's the euro. The euro is accepted everywhere. And honestly, card payments are ubiquitous. So you just don't need much cash. However, I know that a lot of our members, again, traditionally favor carrying cash. Great. I don't recommend getting it in advance, just because it's generally a hassle at banks in Canada. And I certainly wouldn't get it at the exchange rate places in the airport, because the rates are ridiculous. Honestly, we do strongly recommend, we love this thing called the Wise card. I've written about it in the pre-trip information document. It is like a prepaid card that you can have multiple currencies, you can manage them, you can just put a bunch of Canadian dollars on there and then spend in whatever other currency. It will automatically exchange at really the best exchange rate. Wise bases everything on the median exchange rate, with a very small markup compared to Canadian banks are charging 3-4% margin on foreign purchases. In addition to any fees that they might charge. So look into it, read up about it. I know that our members that have adopted it simply love it. There are other options. Some banks offer these foreign currency prepaid cards, which kind of does the same thing. It doesn't have quite the flexibility and versatility, but keep that in mind. And as I said, you can use contactless payment like tap just about anywhere for anything. So honestly, I go weeks in Europe without ever having any cash in my pocket at all. It's really not necessary. So that being said, it doesn't have to be Wise. You can use your credit card from home as well. So and if you want to get cash out, you can use a credit or a debit card in ATM machines over there. You will, depending on the machine, and again, we advise against the one, we tend to recommend the ones at banks, because in many cases in Europe, they don't charge a withdrawal fee. The private ones, just like in Canada, they do. They can charge 3, 4, 5 euros, and then your bank at home is going to charge you another $3, $4, $5, $10. So the fees can add up. So my recommendation, if you're going to take out cash, take out one big sum, take out a couple €100 at the start of the trip once, and then, just use it when needed. This is my advice on cash. Yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to say about that. So let's talk about Telegram. So we do use this app called Telegram, which is a messaging app. Most of you, I think, are familiar with WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or messages like iMessages on if you have an iPhone. Telegram is basically the same. It's just another messaging app. We use it for a couple of reasons. One is because most of our members are not familiar with it, have not used it before. And so you can download this app, quickly set up an account, takes like a couple of minutes. And then use it to communicate with the host or other members of the trip while you're on the trip. And then after it's over, you can delete the whole thing and it's completely private. Nobody has your phone number, and so we largely do it because of privacy reasons. And most of our members end up wanting to know and exchange phone numbers and everything anyway. We're just particularly, how shall I say, cautious or proactive in giving members a way that they can sort of, safeguard their own privacy. So that's why we use Telegram. The instructions are in the pre-trip information document about how to download it. Please do that. Test it out, play with it before the trip. If you have problems with it, and again, some people are more technologically savvy than others, grab a child or a grandchild and get them to help you and show you how it works. That's the easiest, just because it's if all of the members on the trip come to our host Alfie, who I'll introduce in a second, and ask for his help, it's going to be a little bit overwhelming. So do try it out. And again, once you get used to it, our members really quite love it. And a lot of them keep it. And many of them still message me from trips that I've done in the past. So let's talk about the phone itself. As I said, you can bring your phone with you. And then if you're somebody that likes to be on the net or have access to the internet, you can pick up a SIM card locally. I don't recommend getting it at the airport in Athens because they do kind of overcharge. If you're coming early and you're staying overnight in Athens, then you can buy it in the city, or we'll have a place sourced out for when you arrive where you can buy your SIM card in CHANIA if you want to get a local SIM card. I don't know the prices offhand. It's usually about $20 or $25, which will be enough for the whole trip, which is kind of like one day on Rogers or Bell roaming from home. So if you are planning, if you would like the flexibility of having mobile data, it's recommended, but you'll find Wi-Fi in all the hotels and pretty much all the restaurants, most places you go. So a lot of our members just don't even want to bother with it. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say about that. And yeah, you will get messages typically in the evening from your host Alfie, and just giving you sort of an update on the daily activities the next day and the timing and any updates and things that you sort of need to know. And so that's why, again, it's good to bring your phone and to have Telegram installed on it. Okay, next thing that we need to talk about. Yeah, flying to and arriving. So now we're getting up to departure day. Keep an eye on your emails. Check for your flight changes. We are still seeing, flight changes and issues in the days leading up to the flight. And typically the day that you're going to depart is when you'll know if there's going to be any kind of a problem. Let's hope there isn't. But you just want to be aware. And so one of the first things to know is that if you become aware that there is a schedule change on your flight or a delay, we have that email address that we've tried to stick everywhere, delays@wheelandanchor.ca. You don't need to email anyone else. You don't need to. If you simply, that email address goes to several of us at Wheel and Anchor. And so basically, whoever's the first person that gets the message is going to make sure that we're informed and that the host, that Alfie's informed, and that our local person that's picking you up at the airport in Chania is informed so that we'll know where you're at. So that is the most important thing. Again, a good reason to have your phone with you, because if you're at Pearson and they say the flight's going to be 3 hours delayed and you're going to miss the connection, then you can quickly send an email to delays@, and we will get in touch with you, and we'll make sure that everybody's informed and knows where you're at. Taking 2 steps back before, let's talk about jet lag for a minute, because this is, let's face it, jet lag affects all of us. And what we found is that one of our hosts, Amber, discovered this app called timeshifter.com. And I'm going to put it into the chat box here. Didn't put it in the pre-trip document. I just put in the chat box the domain timeshifter.com. It is a jet lag mitigation app. Amber, who, as I say, is a host for us and jets around the world, swears by it. It gives you some practices to do up to about 3 days before the trip that you can follow. And she says, she arrives and she has no jet lag. I haven't tried it. I have my own little sort of habits and tricks everybody does, but you might want to check it out. Because there is a significant time difference, of course, to Greece, 7 hours from Toronto and 10 hours from the West Coast. So you might want to check that out. Get to the airport early. Better to stay and have a cocktail or whatever and be there on time. And again, if something comes up with flight changes, you've got also more time to manage the situation. Be mindful of the weight of your luggage. And as I say, traveling light is the best. A lot of our members are becoming accustomed to travel with carry-on only. So if you want a surefire way to not have your luggage lost and have stress the first couple of days of your trip, then go with carry-on only. But do pay attention in any event to the luggage weights, the capacity that the airline provides. Typically, they give you one bag up to 23 kilograms. So just be mindful of that. And when you're getting ready for your flight, always think about how to be comfortable on the plane. Some people, dress up because we're going to be out in public and all the rest of it. But in the end of the day, you're on a red-eye overnight flight to Europe. Wear the most comfortable thing that you can so you can get a couple hours of rest. And please, again, drink lots of water on the plane. We all tend to want to have a little tipple of this or that. But hydration is one of the most key things to combating the jet lag. Great. Oh, yes. Now I want to introduce Alfie. And he's really sorry he couldn't be on the call, but Alfie is your host for the trip. He's one of our most favorite hosts. He's hosted trips for us in Madeira, in Cyprus, in Tuscany, in Japan, in Croatia, anyway, all over the place. He's one of our most favorite hosts, a terrific young chap. He will be meeting you in CHANIA when you arrive. I'm not sure if he'll be at the airport or I'll be greeting you at the hotel, but he'll be there. His email address is in the documents that we've sent. Again, he'll be connected in with that delays email if there's any problems. So you'll know how to get a hold of Alfie, and he will likely be sending everyone out a Telegram message, or you'll log in and send him a message and he'll reply back. So you'll be in connection, in touch with him. Yeah, again, you'll have a lot of fun with Alfie because he's a great adventurer, and yeah, just a lot of fun to have on our trips. So, just covering off the itinerary. And again, I'm not going to go through in huge detail because it's all there. But I just wanted to mention a few things about your trip. Of course, you're flying into Athens and connecting through to CHANIA. I think most folks have booked the flight all the way through to CHANIA. And so again, be mindful if you are on a separate ticket, or if you're arriving in early, just to get to the airport in Athens in time to make that domestic hop down to CHANIA. And again, if you are coming early and you're on a separate ticket, you may have separate luggage restrictions, because domestic flights in Europe are often 20 kilograms for one bag. And so if you pack 22, they might give you a bit of a hassle. They might not, but just be mindful of that. So we're obviously going to spend the first 4 nights here on the western side of Crete. Crete is a massive island, but it'll give you a good sense of this, very unique place that is different than the Cyclades and the other Greek islands we're going to visit. And it's quite different from the mainland as well. So we'll have a great time there. We will then head to Heraklion for a night, which is the principal city the largest city in Crete, before going by ferry boat first to Santorini for a couple of nights, then on to Naxos for a couple of nights, and then on to Syros for a couple of nights. So we're going to get a good sense of these islands. Obviously, the most famous and touristically celebrated, Santorini, but also the lesser known ones. Naxos is still quite popular among tourists. Syros is even lesser known. And that's where you get, I think, the real sense of what life is like in the Greek islands, the purpose of this whole trip. So let's get into, again, a couple of details about the itinerary. I just wanted to note a couple other things just in terms of sort of guidelines for the trip in terms of smoking. Obviously, our trips are non-smoking. Most of our members are non-smoking. Most people bristle up if they even smell smoke within 100 yards. There is smoking in Greece. People do still smoke in some places quite prolifically. So just be mindful of that, because I always find it interesting in this day and age. Canadians tend to be, oh my God, somebody's smoking over there. Well, they're allowed to smoke in restaurants outside. But we just ask that if you are a smoker, just don't smoke around other members of the group. That's just much appreciated, because as I say, most of us are kind of almost anti-smokers. So be mindful of that. one other thing as well about health. If at any point you don't feel well, if it's just a cold, or if it's some other a flu, or you feel something coming on, please let your host know. And the other thing that we do ask is, if you are showing symptoms, if you are coughing, even if it's a cough that you've had chronically and what comes and goes, or it's allergic or whatever it happens to be, please, we ask that you bring and wear a mask if you're coughing, just because, let's face it, we've been through the pandemic. It feels like it's history, but people are very uncomfortable. And we've had this feedback from members on trips that, other members are coughing, and then they're like, oh no, it's nothing, but it just makes everybody else uncomfortable. So that's our kind request, that you please wear a mask if you are showing symptoms of a cold, or if you're coughing, and you will be asked, and we graciously request that you accept the request to put on a mask by the host or anybody. It's not meant as an offense, but we're just here to protect everybody else's health. So I think I just wanted to mention that. So as I say, you are going to connect through into Athens. You're going to arrive in CHANIA. You're going to love it. So colorful. It's beautiful. I mean, Crete is just amazing. A nice start. You'll spend a few nights up in there. The second day, actually, we're going to be doing a cooking class and dinner up in the mountains. So you'll actually get hands-on and try some of the food and wine that the area is so much known for. We're gonna be visiting villages all around Crete, and really getting in touch with sort of the local atmosphere and customs, and sampling the olive oil that Greece is so famous for. And so you'll have a fairly full schedule, but at the same time, we like to allow free time, so that you'll have stuff to do along the way. On the way, after the first few nights in CHANIA, we're going to head to Heraklion, stopping at Knossos, which is, of course, one of the most important archaeological historical sites. There's lots of ruins in Greece, as we all know. And I know that some of them, myself included, it's like, after I've seen a few pile of rocks, then it's enough for me. But Knossos is a really important one, and it's a critical stop to learn a little bit about Greek history and its significance in Crete. And then we'll spend a night in Heraklion before the following day we'll be heading by ferry over to Santorini. We were going to be staying in Fira. So we're going to be staying in the principal town, which is sort of like you see here. It's high up on the mountain. We're just behind the sort of the main square. The pictures do more justice than any of my talking could. So we've got a few nights in here. We'll get a nice tour of the island. What I wanted to say here, particularly about Santorini, Naxos, you've got a day free and a half. We'll do a guided tour around the island. You'll get a sense of the places to go, but do a little bit of research ahead of time. Just Google what to do in Santorini, because there are numerous options. There's the Tolos Island with the volcano on it that's directly opposite from the port. So if that interests you to walk around the volcanic island, that might be something to do. There's boat trips, there's cycling trips. You could theoretically, members ask me sometimes, well, could we rent a car? You could, if you're not accustomed to driving on the narrow, windy roads in Europe. Not sure that I would recommend it, but that is a possibility as well. I just strongly recommend that you give some thought to things that you might do. And honestly, what I like to do, I like to just wander around. That's for how I explore these islands and these towns, because it's all so charming. But I know there are some more adventurous folks in the group, and so they might want to go out a little bit further. You can see the landscape here. It's cliffs that lead up to the towns that are on the top of the mountain. So, and there are obviously ways to get around, and between Alfie and the hotel and your guide, they'll explain how to get where it is that you need to go. But a little bit of research and preparation on your part is always highly recommended. So as I say, we'll spend 3 nights over in Santorini. Lots of time to get a sense of this island. In fact, you'll get a much better sense than most people on the Greek cruises that only get about 5 hours to take the whole thing in. So you'll come away with a great experience of it. And then we head to Naxos. Again, we head off by ferry in the morning of the of the 14th of September. And we stay 4 nights in Naxos. Different landscape here. As you say, it's not as high cliffs as you have in Santorini, but the classic Greek whitewashed buildings. And so similarly, we'll have tours around the town, a little bit around the island. You'll have time to explore Naxos. We'll make a side trip to the island of Paros, which will be a long day. So most of our days are pretty leisurely. Like we'll leave 9:30 in the morning. We'll go touring around. We'll have a beautiful lunch somewhere. And then there'll be time in the afternoon. Sometimes it'll be several hours. Sometimes it'll only be a few hours to relax and enjoy and take things in. But in cases like Paros, because of the schedule of the boats that go, we're out for a whole day. Like we leave at 8 in the morning and we won't get back till 7 p.m. at night. But it'll be highly worth it. And again, you'll take that. This is why, again, it's important to have that light bag so you can take stuff with you to be out for the whole day, so that you got to change of clothes if you feel like hopping into that water. How could you not? Or to pick up a few souvenirs along the way. So as I say, 4 nights we'll have spent in Naxos, then we'll head over to Syros. So in terms of the touristicness, if I can put it that way, of these islands, right? We will have Santorini is like perhaps the best known island in Greece. Naxos still well known among tourists, but not nearly as hectic as Santorini is. And then Syros, it's like one more notch down, which is what I like about this, because you really feel like you're sort of more amongst the locals. And there's tourists there as well. People come here for their summer holidays. So we'll spend a couple of nights in Syros, and lots of opportunities as well for either the dinners or the lunches that are not in the program, because on the days, well, we have, as you know, basically breakfast and either lunch or dinner every day, which for most members is enough, but there's so many neat snacks to enjoy in Greece, and you'll be able to have those all around. And yeah, and then our last leg will be back to Athens, where we'll have a leisurely morning on that last day, and then take the ferry into Athens in the afternoon, and then we'll have one last dinner in Athens. And I know that some of our members have extended on for a couple of days to enjoy the city and take it all in. It is a big, sprawling city, but obviously the Acropolis, like you see here, is what most people want to do. So depending on your departure schedule, you'll be able to take some of that in. And I know some of our members are continuing on to our Turkey program, which follows immediately, and Alfie will be hosting as well. And so they will be departing out. We will let you know, or your airline will let you know if there's any issues with your departure flights, but otherwise you will have gotten, in most cases, a transfer confirmation voucher for the transfers to the airport. And again, Alfie will be up to date on all info. And if we are notified, if you booked your flights through us, we've been notified of any changes, then we'll already be on top of that and take care of any adjustments to the departure schedule. And that basically is it. So I am happy to take any questions that anybody has. I think I covered everything on my list. Let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to mention. I don't think so. Oh, I see. I have a comment here, a thing here about safety and security in Greece. It's safe. Greece is a very safe place to travel to. That being said, if you are out at night in Athens, in downtown, I mean, the same thing would apply to any large city. I mean, just be wary. But Greece is a safe place to visit. There's no problem in there. I implied it throughout the webinar, but obviously there is quite a bit of walking on this trip, so just be cognizant of that. It's really the only way to get around these older cities and these islands. So I think everybody's aware of our guidelines for all that, and obviously we're going to try and make it as comfortable as we can for those who are perhaps let's say going a little bit more leisurely. So a couple of questions have come in. Diane asked about, can you drink the tap water in Greece? So generally speaking, yes. So Greece follows the EU standards for tap water. So generally speaking, in the hotels, you can drink the tap water in Greece. I always say double check with the hotel, because there's usually two reasons why you might not want to drink the tap water. One is the taste. And this comes up a lot in Europe because of the way they treat the water. Sometimes it tastes, chlorine, like a little bit like we have at home here if you're not used to it, or it might have some other, if it has a high iron content to it. So it could be that. Or if you're somebody that has sort of tummy issues or susceptible to it, not because the water is not good, but it's because it has a different sort of chemical composition to it. Some people can be uncomfortable. So you might want to just stick to bottled water for the first couple of days. But I reiterate, generally, you can drink the tap water in hotels in anywhere in Greece. It follows EU standards. Okay. But just, as I say, be mindful of that. And then Rick asked a couple of questions about Telegram. If you're having difficulties with Telegram, again, I strongly recommend asking a family member, or particularly somebody of a younger generation, for some help. It is, for some, super easy to install and download and all the rest of it. For others, it's a little bit more of a challenge. There's a million YouTube videos on there on setting it up as well. And I think one of them is included in the guide that we sent. That's the best way. We just don't have the capacity to show everybody how to use Telegram, but you will get it, I promise. So Rick, hang in there. And if you don't figure it out right away, as I say, ask a friend or a family member, and they'll give you some assistance to get that going. Is Wi-Fi or an internet connection? Yeah, you need to be connected to the internet, because you do need to give it a phone number. It has to reference you by some way to get into Telegram. But the telephone number you can mark as private, so nobody can see what the phone number is. But you do need to be connected to the internet. It's an app like any other app. So to download it, install it, you need to be online. So that's why it's best to do it at home before you leave. And as I say, there should be in some instructions in there. There are instructions in there, and as I say, ask for help from a younger family member if it's necessary. Let's see what other questions we've got. Let's see here. Here we go. So Janet is asking if anybody else is arriving early. And so anyway, as far as connecting with anybody that's arriving early, we don't really have a forum for doing that. But what many of our members have done is just go to our Facebook group. If you are on Facebook and if you're in our group, please do join it. And so you can post in there saying, hey, I'm on Greece. I'd like to connect before the trip. And so that way, you can meet up with anybody that's arriving early. And so another question about Telegram? Yes, about your cell phone. So Telegram you need to set it up with the phone number, but it's the username that you set for it is universal. It's not attached to your phone number, so you don't need to change anything in Telegram. It's once you've set it up with your username, that's yours. So it's not, even if you change SIM cards, it's still the same. Okay, it's just it just uses data. It's not attached to your phone number. Cool. I think that's all the questions. So if something else comes up, please do drop us a note. Drop Paula, Barb, whoever set you up on this trip, a note. And if they don't have the answer right away, of course, they'll come back to me or to Alfie to get your questions answered. And I'm really excited for you guys for this trip. It's going to be an amazing time in Greece. It's a great time to go. I'm hoping the weather is amazing. I'm hoping it's not too hot. Have a wonderful time, and we'll look forward to catching up with you again on another webinar sometime soon. Take care, everybody, and have a marvelous time. Bye-bye for now.